Did you hear about them preparing to release the water in Conroe, or?
No, I didn't hear anything about that. The main thing that we heard is, just the rain, the rain, the rain, the rain. And I had no idea because I was high and dry, but I heard a lot of noise on the main road, and it was still raining. And I said to my husband, "You want to just walk down and just?" Boy, that's a lot of noise, because you could hear, which I had no idea that the flood had come in and flooded all my friends and family that lived back here. So it was crazy.
What kind of noise was it like?
Just a lot of heavy traffic. You could hear, just the sounds of trucks and trailers and just that real swooshing and just a lot of unusual sounds. And when we got to the corner, we stood at the corner and we looked and saw this truck with this trailer with this sign, and it said Cajun Navy. And I said, "What is that?" I had never even known about it. So I saw that, and I thought, something bad has happened. And it was, but we didn't even know that. We had no idea that people were in such terrible danger and all of that. Because we were high and dry, and we didn't hear anything about it. And I wasn't on the website, flooding Kingwood. I don't even know if it was working at that point, but I had no idea. But I said to my husband, something really bad is happening. I think it was just probably online at first, and then of course just hearing from friends and finding out what was going on. So it was so big and so overwhelming that it's the weirdest thing that you can be in the middle of a disaster and not even know that it's happening. And that's kind of how it was for us. And I'm thankful. I still cannot believe that not one person drowned in Kingwood, because the water was up to the necks of people. And one of my dear friends had to leave her house and walk through that flood up to her neck to get to a house. She didn't have a boat rescue her. She and her husband just got out and walked to the only house that was high enough in her community to be impacted. And so that I thought about, what? She's about a head taller than me. So, I would have had to swim because it would have been over my head. I know that's crazy, and I had, oh my goodness, the stories that you hear from your friends. If I can just tell you, this one friend of mine got rescued 3 times. Oh, wow. 3 times. When I finally caught up with her, I asked her, because I knew she had gotten flooded, but things were just so chaotic for days and days. But when I finally was able to catch up to her, she told me that she was driving to work. She was just leaving to drive to work. She got flooded out. Some truck came by and rescued her and deposited her at a store location. Well, then the store got flooded out, and she had to get rescued again, and they brought her back home. And then her house got flooded out, and the Cajun Army, I think it was, I don't know if it was them for sure, but had to just drive up to their door, and they had to be rescued out of their own home. and her husband did not swim, so he was extremely impacted by the fear of water. I mean, drowning, if you can't swim, if that's not a reason to give your kids swim lessons. So just the trauma that I watched my friends go through, some of them did okay, others of them, you know, it hits everybody differently. Some had insurance, some did not, all of those things. So it was quite a huge life-altering event. Anybody can provide support for another person. All it takes is listening and giving people the time to tell their story and to have genuine concern about who that person is. And because every story is different, and I'm sure you've heard that. Every single person has their own story. And each one is so unique and so precious because it's life-altering. And in any disaster, there is a rainbow. And the rainbow is what made Harvey beautiful. Because Harvey was a terrible tragedy, a terrible, traumatic tragedy. And as a volunteer, I felt so helpless watching what happened and feeling like, oh my goodness, I can't put a Band-Aid on what happened to you. I cannot do anything to change what happened, but I'm sure going to be a friend, and I'm sure going to listen as best I can. And I am so proud of the responses that came out of Harvey. As Christmas approached, who's thinking about Christmas? You're living in such a shell of a house, or you're living in a hotel, or you're living in somebody else's house, or you're living upstairs, or the scattering that happened. So you know that people were not thinking about Christmas. And there's little children in these families who are thinking about Christmas. So I asked for help from Mary Jo and her church, and they were wonderful. The First Presbyterian Church of Kingwood was a major reason that the project went forward, because the pastor of that I spoke with, Mark Wren, caught the vision, because he's kind of crazy too. I don't know if I can say that, but and he caught the vision, and he helped me to mobilize to build a forest, a miniature forest of holiday little Christmas trees that we asked the community who were not impacted to join us and build a forest of these incredible trees that were designed by individuals. It was just a movement. And so they did that. They helped me, and we began to grow a forest from 5 trees to 10 to 15 to 20 to over 200 at least of these miniature trees. And there was a tree right out here in the lobby, this little tree, for people to know about the project. Because you know what, if you are untouched by Harvey physically, it doesn't mean you're not touched in your heart. And people were looking for something to do to express their love and compassion for the families that were flooded. So within a very short amount of time, we had a huge forest that we invited the community to come and to pick out their tree. And then the trees that were still there, because we got way more than we expected, we just gathered them up and went out into the sections of Kingwood that were flooded out, knocked on doors and said, hey. And if they were there, we gave them a tree. We went to the local hotels where families were staying with their children, and I brought a display of trees into their lobby, and there were people that were bringing meals in. I mean, because it's such a huge community effort. And so while they came down for their meals, they saw the trees, and their children in their little pajamas just picked out the trees, and it was such a joy to bring a little tree into a hotel room. Imagine spending Christmas in a hotel room and not even having a tree. So very little effort to do something like that. What great rewards to just comfort and encourage people that are hurting.